This is Cody, aka DFS Project, coming to you live with MMA Lock of the Night. The legend himself. We're here to talk about some UFC Vegas 29. We're already sad about the Tim Means fight being off, but it is what it is. This card is decent. It has some holes in it that I think has some light, honestly. What do you think of this card overall?
It's a decent fight. We were just quickly chatting off the air about the Tim Means and Danny Roberts fight falling off. That was going to be a barn burner of a fight. That was actually a fight that was targeting the under 2.5 at with that plus money. I thought that was a good spot. But interesting card. It's especially when you have Alexei Oleinik and Sergey Spivak in the
Yeah,
co-main event, you're like, ooh, what are we in for? But there are some intriguing matchups throughout. I'm really excited for Jandiroba against Murata. I think that's going to be a great grappling exchange there. But yeah, decent fight. At least we get some fights, right? We get 12 solid fights, knock on wood. Nothing drops out over the next couple days. But fights are fights at the end of the day. And as much as of nerds that we are with the
right.
UFC, we're just thankful that there's fights, right?
I'm just happy there's a fight card this weekend. Yeah, exactly. So, starting off the very first fight, Chaos Williams. How do you feel about this fight?
Man, I've been one of those guys that have been fading Chaos Williams to no avail recently, right? Other than the Michelle Pereira fight, I actually didn't end up pulling the trigger there, but I did predict Pereira to win. I went pretty heavy on Abdul Razak Hassan, and I paid for that. But I didn't even bet the Morono one. Obviously, Morono was like a minus
Yeah.
400 favorite in that fight, so that was nothing you couldn't really touch. I feel like Chaos is one of those like knockout or bust type of fighters, and people are just gonna, if they're wiki capping it, they're just gonna look at it and be like, "What are you talking about? He's gone to a decision 6 times and he's won four of them, right?" But it's just more so those fights when you watch them, especially his last two decision fights against Tony Hervey and Jeremy Holloway. Um, there's small mistakes that those fighters make that Chaos Williams is able to take advantage of. But as Chaos starts to fight higher and higher level of competition, he's not going to be able to get away with, taking advantage of those types of mistakes. Now, there's still big question marks about Summelsberger. Like, we still got to figure out what he's truly going to bring to the table. But I like what he brings, right? Like, he has good pace, good pressure, good combinations, good leg kicks, decent ground game from at least what we've been told. But with Chaos Williams, it's all it takes is one punch. If he lands that one punch, it's going to be night for Summelsberger. So we need to see a little bit more of a patient and disciplined Summelsberger this time around compared to what we saw with him against Carlton Minus. Minus landed a bunch of strikes in that fight, but you got to assume that Summelsberger is going to be a little bit more cautious this time around. And I've seen a lot of people on the under 2.5 in this fight, but I think that it only comes from the Chaos side. Chaos is very durable, hasn't been finished, at least I don't believe he has. And he ate a lot of big shots from his past couple of opponents, not to mention Pereira landed several significant strikes, and Chaos didn't even will to get dropped or rocked or anything like that. So I think Summelsberger is going to take this fight probably by decision, but it's going to be a slow, methodical approach. Try to wear on the gas tank of Chaos, because I don't think that Chaos has that sustainability with his knockout power. All of his knockouts have come in the first round. He has one in the second round, but that was his second ever fight against a 2-5 scrub. But I do
Yeah.
like Summelsberger here. I think he stays away from the big power, mixes in a couple of takedowns here and there, but ultimately outpoints Chaos over 15 minutes.
Exactly. As I pull up the odds now, the over 1.5 is negative 150. So that line's obviously now juiced from the very beginning of what it was. So you're either going to get a guy, like you said, Chaos Williams is a one-man knockout crew. It's literally one punch and you're done with him. That's the thing. I think people are taking for granted Salzburger, though. I think people don't know who this guy is, and they're seeing Chaos Williams, the guy, that the name value is kind of there for him because he is a one-punch knockout guy. And people don't know Smellsburger, which I think his grappling's there. The striking can hang with Chaos Williams, in my opinion. I think this is a great fight to look at Smellsburger here. And I'm looking at the odds right now. You can get him at plus money still. So the line is at plus 135 for Chaos Williams is negative 155. That line, I think, is juiced also, in my opinion. I don't mind taking the underdog here whatsoever, looking at these odds right now. I mean, I do think that Chaos Williams, yes, if he can get that one punch knockout, that there's your money. This is kind of similar to the Paul Craig and Jamal Hill fight. In my opinion, that's where I'm kind of looking at this, but this is obviously not the caliber that they are. But looking at it from how this fight goes, if Spellsberger can't get the grapple, there it is. And Jamal Hill, as we saw, had his arm dangled. So I mean, that's where I'm kind of looking at. I think the grappling and Spellsberger is there for him. I think you can easily lock and load him at a plus money if you feel confident in the underdog in the first fight of the night, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you. I really like Summelsberger in the spot to get it done. And again, outpoint. I think the decision prop is actually plus 320, which is crazy. So I'm definitely going to be taking a little bit of a sprinkle on that one.
Exactly. But going down to the Rick Glenn and Joaquim Silva fight, how do you feel about this fight?
I really like Silva here. Minus 130, I think, is indicative of how a lot of people are thinking of this fight. Ricky Glenn closer to a 3-year layoff, Joaquim Silva closer to a 2-year layoff. Ricky Glenn, though, having to deal with the hip surgery in that amount of time. He was scheduled to fight Carl Tomanis back in December, obviously. Both of his coaches and him tested positive for COVID, so he had to pull out. He was hoping to get a short notice fight, but that call didn't come. Ended up becoming a father in that amount of time, so took some time to play Papa Glenn for a little bit. And I'm interested to see how that affects his ability to come in here and fight and what kind of change that could have on him. But in terms of breaking these guys down style wise, Rick Glenn is more often the guy that's always moving forward and kind of marching his opponents down, but he just never does a good job in terms of doing it effectively. And what I mean by that is that with his striking, he just leaves a lot of openings for himself. That's why guys like Kevin Aguilar and Maz Jury are able to beat him just off of their back foot. If you just watch those fights, Glenn is the one moving forward the entire time. But you see, especially in the last fight, Kevin Aguilar, who was an inch shorter than Joaquim Silva, still landing significant strikes, still landing the biggest shots, and really putting Ricky Glenn into some precarious positions. I do think that Joaquim Silva will be successful with the same type of game plan. Glenn is coming up a weight class now. If you remember, he missed weight by about 2.5 pounds in his last fight against Aguilar. Now he's coming up to 155, and I don't think he'll have the same strength advantage that he'll have over his opponents at 155. He'll always obviously still be the taller fighter in most of his fights, like he is here. I believe he's 6 foot compared to the 5'8" from Joaquim Silva. But I think that Silva is just a much more vicious striker. He may not be the technically better fighter in terms of the striking, but he just hits with such ferocity that really starts to wilt his opponents. One last thing I'll say about this fight: there's been a narrative out there about Joaquim Silva slowing down and having late fight gaffes and stuff, but he won the 3rd round against Vince Pichel. He probably deserved to win that fight, even though it was a unanimous decision victory for Vince Pichel. If you check out the MMA decisions, a lot of people gave the 1st round to Silva, and then he obviously won the 3rd round. So he probably could have won that fight. And then obviously the Jared Gordon fight right after that finishes Jared Gordon in the 3rd round, investing in the body shots, investing in working the body, and then eventually going to the head, and it works out for him. So I'm expecting the same thing here. He might get marched down for the majority of this fight, but I think he's going to land the more significant strikes, and that's ultimately going to cause Rick Glenn to kind of fold. And then I think Silva could knock him out. I think Silva by knockout, probably 2nd round, is probably the way to go here. I just don't think that Glenn is going to be able to hang with the power and impactful strikes that Silva is going to be throwing his way. So ultimately, I'm going to be going with Joaquim Silva to win this fight by 1st or 2nd round KO.
Exactly. That Aguilar fight with Glenn, that's where I would kind of draw the line with Glenn. I'm like, you're facing Aguilar, and that loss was not great. So that's where I'm kind of looking at, like, who's the better athlete here from a standpoint of it's obviously going to be Silva. It's all around ready to go in this fight. I think this kind of is an easier breakdown than it needs to be. I think this is an easy fight for Silva. I think he comes in there guns blazing and is ready to go and basically move his way up in the UFC. I think this is his fight to prove that he still got it after this layoff. So in my opinion, I'm taking the easier athlete, the ready to go fighter in Silva. I mean, like I said, looking at back with the tape with Glenn and Aguilar, it just didn't look right at all to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. So that's where I'm kind of looking at is the guy in Silva, who I think is more UFC caliber right at this moment. So that's where I'm kind of drawing the line. I wouldn't mind taking a knockout prop with him. I think he can easily get it done here at plus money. So that's where I'm kind of looking at in this fight. I mean, I know it's a quick and easy breakdown, but I'm just looking at the guy who's better overall here. Easier said than done. I mean, it's obviously Silva here than Ricky Glenn.
Yeah, I think the only chance Glenn has to win this fight is if he drags this fight to the ground. But the guy has a 13% takedown accuracy rate, right? Like he's more so desperation takedowns and stuff. I think that Silva will be strong enough to keep this fight on the feet and then let his hands go and eventually find that knockout.
Exactly. So moving on to Kmar versus the Nick Nalbarego fight. How do you feel about this fight, man?
This is a tough one. This is going to be a slot fest and a half, and I know that Kimura is like the biggest biggest favorite actually on the card, and I think rightfully slow. I don't think that Nega Mariano has much to offer. You know, he's been starching bums on the regional scene over there in his hometown or a home country of Romania, and we saw what happened in his fight against Safarov, and I don't really rate Safarov that heavily. I don't even think Safarov is in the UFC anymore, to be honest.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Nega Mariano, I think he's been out since about February or March of 2019, so it's been a long time since we've seen him. But I think he's in for a stiff test here against Alexa Kimura, who is probably the better fighter all around, right? I think if Kimura is able to stay away from the blitzing attacks of Nega Mariano, and as long as he stays conscious, I think he should be able to kind of grapple fuck and just get this fight to the ground and just kind of control him at will, or even if he wants to keep this fight on the feet, I think he can outpoint him on the feet. It's all coming down to, does Nega Mariano land that knockout blow? So I think I have seen a couple people on Nega Mariano, and I don't understand it, but to each their own. I think you're leaving money on the table if you don't take Nega Mariano by KO at plus 700, as I do think that's probably the best path to victory for him. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Kimura. I think he plays it safe. I think he takes this fight down time and time again, and I think he grinds out a decision here, and that lands at plus 135. Completely agree with it. I'm on the Kimura side.
Exactly. Looking at Nick's history, I mean, look at the guys he's fought. Plain and simple, like you were saying. These are easily like layup options, in my opinion. Yeah. These are just guys that boost up his record. I mean, looking at the records, I can go back and look at all of them. I mean, it just did not look good at all. I don't like that when they try to do this for these guys, because that just kind of, the record does not show the capability that they have, in my opinion. Because he obviously is not ready for this. I mean, like you said, looking at last fight, it didn't look okay at all. I think Kimura comes in here and handles business. I think this is his fight to win, like you said. I think, even though he didn't look too well last night, Kimura, but I think he bounces back here. I think this is a bounce back option for him that he can easily take over in this fight. So that's where I'm kind of looking at in this fight. I know a lot of experts are on Nick with the KO, which, I mean, that's his only path to victory. It's all he has is the power. He doesn't have the grappling, obviously. So if he can get the knockout, then that's good for you. I'll go ahead. I mean, plain and simple, I'll let you take that money and go and see if that happens. But in my opinion, I think this is Kimura's fight to win.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just fading Kimura due to that William Knight loss, and you can't do that. You can't just go back and look at their last fight. You got to look at their body of work, and some people might say you're doing that with the Nega Mariano type of thing, but look at his track record. Yeah, look at his body of work. It's just squash matches. It's tomato cans. Kimura's actually been fighting decent competition, and he has a great training camp behind him as well. So, yeah, I like Kimura here. I think he grinds this one out.
I mean, looking at that William Knight, though, William Knight was a whole different beast in that fight.
Oh, yeah.
William Knight was not the regular William Knight. He came out strong and actually looked way better than he was supposed to in that fight. So I'm taking that one, kind of chopping that off as a loss for Kimura, yes. But compared to Nick's history, it's no difference. There's a huge difference, in my opinion.
I agree. Everybody's rating Kimura slightly lower now just because of what Da Un Jung did to William Knight, right? So
exactly.
Don't read into the narratives. Look at the body of work, compare it stylistically. I don't see how you come out with anything other than Alexa Kimura after running the tape.
Exactly. We'll go to the female fight. This is an interesting one, in my opinion. Laura versus Casey O'Neill. How do you feel about this fight, my man?
Procopio versus Casey O'Neill. This is a tough fight. I do lean with the dog here in O'Neill, but both girls are still quite green in their MMA careers. The funny thing is, you got Procopio, black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I kind of give it a slight advantage in terms of technical striking and ability to kind of just wade through the fire and just move forward, just as we saw in her fight against Carol Hosa. But I think the aggressiveness and the tenacity of Casey O'Neill might actually end up being the difference maker in this fight. She's one that obviously goes out there and tries to look for takedowns and tries to get a ground and pound going and just try to smother her opponent. And that is seemingly on the surface a tough ask against a girl who's a black belt for as long as Procopio has been a black belt. But Procopio doesn't have that Mackenzie Dern or Verna Jandiroba or that crazy Damian Maia type jiu-jitsu where I don't think that Casey O'Neill is going to be truly in serious danger if she decides to take this fight to the ground. I don't think Procopio has great wrestling, so I think it's going to be on O'Neill to get this fight to the ground if it does start to get engaged in the grappling realm. But with a close fight, I consider it a coin flip fight. I would rather take the value on Casey O'Neill at plus 130. I do think she lands the takedowns. I do think she gets good top control. I think she's tenacious enough in the ground and pound that she might not be able to get the finish, but I do think that she'll be able to land the better strikes, stay active enough on top, nullify any of the submissions or reversals coming back from the Procopio side. And I think that Casey O'Neill, I think that she actually wins this fight probably by decision, but I'd say one of the tougher fights, if not the toughest fight to call on the card.
Exactly. I'm kind of going on a side sentiment with that, with Damian Maia and Diaz. Do you think he gets to that fight? for his last fight, or no?
Damian Maia and Nick Diaz.
Yeah, do you think that
That would
happens?
be a sick fucking fight. That would
Because
be a great
you saw
fight.
what Maya came out on Instagram and said, right? That he wants his last fight versus Diaz.
I'd love that. Like, I think it would be a great story for Damian Maia and obviously Nick Diaz. That's the type of not. I'm not
Yeah,
calling Damian Maia a layup, but it's a solid fight for him to come back to and not completely look like a somebody that hasn't won a fight in
yeah,
what he hasn't won a fight in what 8 years, like
yeah. I think
crazy.
this is. I think that would be a good fight for him to end his career on, like he's wanting to do. He's saying that he wants his last fight with Vince Diaz to end his career, and I mean, it could be worth it. Honestly, it could be worth it.
I'd be so down.
Exactly.
I want to honestly. I want to see Nick Diaz against like Carlos Condit again. I wouldn't mind that rematch, or Nick Diaz against Robbie Lawler. Give me that rematch again. Those are the types of fights I want to see. I don't want to see him against a killer in the top five.
Exactly. I mean, he did Brock Walt Harris, though. I mean, not Walt Harris, Leon Edwards. I mean, that
Yeah.
was. But, anyways, going on to this fight, I think Casey O'Neal's a great underdog here. That's where I'm mainly looking at. I love the plus money on her. I think she's a young talent that they're trying to really come up with. The UFC is. I mean, she's a rising star in this UFC caliber. I think the grappling's there. I think Laura, I mean, she's a grappler, yes. And I think this is going to be a grappling match if you want to look at it from the standpoint of over 2.5 or under 2.5. I think that if one of these girls gets a hold of each other on the ground, that under 2.5 is looking enticing, in my opinion, if O'Neal can actually try to out-grapple Laura here. But like I said, I think this all comes down to not really the striking. This comes down to the grappling standpoint, and I'm taking Casey O'Neal. I think that she's just the better athlete here. And like I said, I think she has a slight reach advantage, but I think that gives her a little bit more too. So I think if I'm looking from an upside standpoint, I'm looking from where can I get the best money for my money right now for the bet. I'm looking at Casey O'Neal, plain and simple.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think a decision prop is not a bad look on this fight either.
Exactly. Julia Rosa versus Sang Won Chu. How do you feel about it, my man?
This is one of the dark horses for fight of the night. I think this is going to be a great fight. Two primary strikers. Julian Rosa has a little bit more of a submission acumen than Sungwoo Choi brings to the table here, but I think we'll see Choi endure the wild style of Rosa early, and then as the fight starts to get settled in and they start to get more comfortable, I think the more technical striking from Choi is going to ultimately catch up to Arosa here. Arosa, he could go for takedowns, but I do think that we've been seeing an improving game from Choi over his last several fights. And I do think that he will be able to keep this fight vertical. And then with the wild winging style of Arosa, I think the more technical pinpoint shots from Choi are going to be more damaging and more impactful and could ultimately even lead to a finish here, as Arosa has been finished in his past. Like when Arosa throws his shots, he like whips his shots. It's weird. Like he doesn't really do it with much precision. It's more so I'm going to whip everything into this, swing my whole body and try to land this one punch on you. If I don't, I'm going to have overextended. I'm going to be vulnerable to counters, all that type of stuff. And I think that Choi can absolutely take advantage of that. So I see some people on the under 2.5. I don't mind that angle. I ultimately think that it's going to be Choi just batting like a perfect fight. Again, get settled after that first half round or so, because we know that Rosa likes to start fast and heavy. But I think after that, if Choi survives that, I think he starts to take over this fight. This could be a really good live betting opportunity as well. You might be able to get a good number or even a better number on Choi after round one, but it just depends on how effective he is in round one and kind of taking Arosa's game and putting it against him. So I'm going to go with Choi. I'll take Choi by decision, but man, this fight's going to be fun for as long as it lasts, to be honest.
I'm about to say, I do think that this can go to that point, but I think this can also end in a knockout pretty easily if one of these guys can land that shot. Because like you said, with the accuracy of Choi, which is where I'm mainly looking at, the volume for Arosa with the power that he brings, just going crazy with Juicy J. That's how he is, obviously. So it depends on who do you think is going to land that punch and basically do the most damage, which I think if Choi can get that done with the accuracy, like you were saying, and pinpointing where he needs to punch, I think he can easily knock him out. I think he's capable. But both of these guys are looking great. I think this is a great fight overall. Like you said, a dark horse fight. I think in my notes, I've literally typed a great fight with exclamation point because I think this is one of the better fights on the card. So looking at this, like I said, Rosa, he's been on fire recently. Choi's coming off of 2 victories in a row. I think both these guys have looked great. I think Rosa, he has constantly looked good though, and I think this is a fight for Choi to prove even better for him. So in my opinion, I don't mind taking a shot at Rosa getting a knockout here, possibly. I would not mind that bet whatsoever. But like I said, if you think this goes to the decision, I think it possibly can. If both of these guys can't get the knockout, because this is obviously not going to be a grappling match. This is going to be an all-out brawl, basically with the striking. So, in my opinion, I think Choi can get it done if he lands that one-shot punch. But if Rosa goes out there wild and just starts throwing fire to the flames, I think he can get the knockout here also.
Yeah, Rosa by KO plus 715, Rosa by sub plus 485. I think he is live for one of those finishes, but I ultimately think it's going to be Choi that minds his P's and Q's, stays disciplined, and just outstrikes him over 15 minutes.
Exactly. Moving on to the heavyweight, Parisian versus Rocco Martinez. How do you feel?
Ooh, we talked about Slopfest in the past, right? I forgot what fight we were talking about earlier, but this one, I think it's going to be one of those decision slopfests, like we got with Parker Porter and Josh Parisian last time around. I think that Parisian, he's more so a KO robust fighter, in my opinion. I think his gas tank does start to take a hit after that first round. I think Rocky Martinez is very, very durable. I think that he'll be able to take the shots of Parisian. My concern is if Parisian is successful in dragging this fight to the ground early, and then maybe he gets full mount and starts going apeshit on Rocky Martinez, and he could possibly get him out that way. If that doesn't work, though, Martinez is really going to start to put it on him later in this fight. Like I said, Martinez is super durable. He has good boxing, good, decent striking, good leg kicks, good work in the clinch. And I think the amount that Parisian starts to slow down after that first round, it's truly going to cause him some trouble here. So I do like Martinez here. I actually like the over 1.5. I know it's a little bit chalky at minus 185. I don't see either guy going down early here. I think if a finish does occur, it's actually Roki either late or even just Roki by decision. So I do like Martinez here. I actually haven't even checked out what the Martinez round three is. Martinez round three plus 1350. I might take a little bit of a sprinkle on that, but even Martinez by decision, I think, is a very good spot, which is currently sitting around at plus 355. So I'm going to go Martinez. Again, better striking in the second and third rounds, being the guy that's pushing the pace, getting the clinch positions. Last thing I'll say about it, he doesn't have to worry about like an Alexander Romanov type grappling coming his way. He doesn't have to worry about a sticking and moving type game plan that Dontel Mace has. That's not the type of fighter that Josh Parisian is. Josh Parisian's a bruiser. He likes to throw spitting shits at times, some throws flying shit as well, but he's not a stick and move type of guy. So I think he's going to really drag his gas tank out pretty easily here if he's not able to get Martinez out of there early. So I'll go Martinez, and I'll go Martinez by decision, but over 1.5, probably the best spot here.
Do you think the bigger size out of Parisian is advantage for him, though? That's what I'm kind of looking at. I think the size is what I'm worried about.
See, that's why I kind of let off the breakdown also with if Parisian is able to get him down early and kind of just full mount him, it could be tough. But even Romanov had issues getting him out of there, and I think that Romanov is a much better striker, or at least ground and pounder and grappler than Parisian, right? So I was surprised to see Parisian as big of a favorite as he was against Parker Porter last time around. And although I didn't bet Porter, I did pick him to win, and I was happy to have that one come through. But I really don't think that Parisian is that good, and I think he's going to falter if he's not able to knock out his opponents. And as history has shown us, Martinez is very, very durable. So I do think that he'll be able to take that first onslaught, and then I think he'll start to take over in that second and third round.
Exactly. That's what I'm kind of looking at also, is that I do like Martinez here. Just that size of Parisian is what kind of worried me looking at it from a betting standpoint, because I know the durability on Martinez is there. But like I said, Martinez is the more technical fighter. He should win in this fight, in my opinion, easily. I think, if not easily, but the durability of his in order to prevent the knockout from Parisian should be in his favor. Just the thing is like the size. If Parisian does get on top of him and mount him, that's where I'm kind of worried about. That's where I'm going to be live betting. I'm going to be like, oh, shit, here we go. This is where we already were kind of worried about. But I think Martinez overall, yes, he's the better fighter. I think he has better work ethic in this fight. I think easily overall he just wins in this fight. But then again, like I said, that size is where I'm kind of drawing the line with my betting money and worried about that from my perspective. But overall, this is going to be a slot fest. Like you said, this is a heavyweight fight. We kind of know what's going to happen in this fight. So moving on to a female fight. This is another female fight. I think the female fights, by the way, on this card are amazing. Honestly, I think these two female fights that we have are really great. I think this is what makes the card even better. But anyways, yeah, Gina Roba versus Murtada. How do you feel about this fight, man?
Uh, we got what Olympic freestyle wrestler here in Murata
Yeah,
going up against the BJJ black belt in Jandiroba.
exactly.
More often now you see these types of scenarios play out in the striking realm. But I do think that this is a fight that we actually get to see some grappling exchanges. Now, Jandiroba, a little bit more experience fighting the more tougher competition. Murata, only had one fight in the UFC so far against Randa Marcos. She has one loss on her record, which was Rin Nakai, former UFC fighter from back in the day. But it was a bad situation for Murata, right? I think she was a plus 290 underdog going into that
Yeah.
fight, and she also, only 4 or 5 fights into her pro MMA career, whereas Nakaya had, I believe, 20 plus fights at that point in time, and
Yeah.
and that
She's a
was even a post
way
UFC.
different fighter. Yeah,
Yeah,
way different.
exactly. So that was over 5 or 6 years ago now. So you got to believe
Yeah.
that Murata has been making improvements, and I truly believe that we can definitely see it in her striking. And I truly think this fight will play out based on how Murata dictates it. And what I mean by that is if she goes for takedowns, Jandiroba could probably get her jiu-jitsu going. Or I think if Jandiroba shoots, Murata will be able to have good enough wrestling to kind of keep this fight on the feet, which will cause Jandiroba to have to strike. And then in the striking realm, I don't think that neither woman has a significant advantage over the other. The spot that I actually like the most is actually the over 2.5. I know it's around minus 200, minus 210. That's my favorite spot because I do think that even though you see a lot of finishes on both girls' records, those finishes are coming in spots where the skill discrepancy is so wide. When they actually fight other fighters that have the skill level similar to them, that's when you see the decisions start to hit. Right, for Jandiroba, the Carla Esparza fight, the Mackenzie Dern fight, those fights go to decision. And I think that Murata falls into that category of fighters with strong enough grappling. And again, I think she'll be the much stronger fighter here too, which should nullify the takedown attempts from Jandiroba, or even if Murata wants to take this fight to the ground, I think should be strong enough on top to stay out of the submissions. Now, there have been instances where Murata has made mistakes on the ground. Luckily, she's strong enough, patient enough, and calm enough to just wait those positions out and then eventually get out of it. Most recently, I'm talking about like her fight with Emily Ducati. She did get stuck in a couple armbar situations there, but she was able to get out of them. If she gets stuck in those situations with Jandiroba, it could get a little bit stickier because Jandiroba is easily the highest level black belt that Murata has faced in her 13 fight pro MMA career. Ultimately, I think Murata will dictate where this fight goes. I think we'll get some striking. I think we'll get some grappling. I am going to pick Murata to win by decision. I think a side to pick here is really difficult, but the side that I like the most, or at least the bet that I like the most, is the over 2.5. I do think that we see this go the full 15. I think we see them cancel each other out. And I truly think the reason that the line is only minus 200, like you know it yourself, more often than not,
Yeah.
women's MMA over 2.5, it's usually minus 300 and worse. You're only
Yeah.
getting minus 200 here because the odds makers are probably just looking at all these finishes on the records, but not realizing that these two women are actually really good grapplers and they can nullify each other. And that's exactly what I'm expecting to happen. I'll go Murata decision, but I really like the over 2.5.
Speaking of that, like you said, with nullifying that, I think both these girls, this is going to be a grappling match to the end of the day. I mean, I think both these girls have heck of a grappling aspect. Talented Japanese fighter Murata, she's amazing. I think she's ready to go. I'm not counting that 5 to 6 year loss back then. That's a whole different realm of difference of how she's looked now. I think both these girls, like I said, are going to be. It's going to be up to the grappling. But where I'm giving the key advantage to Murata is the striking. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that she's the better striking than Jandiroba. That's where I'm kind of looking at this. Like you said, Murata's going to have to control this fight. I think this is all about where Murata can go with this fight. If she goes with the grappling, they're going to be on the ground grappling each other out. But if this happens on the feet with the striking, I think this is her fight. So that's what I'm kind of looking at. If she can sway the judges in her favor with the striking, I think she can win that decision at the very end of the day. That's where I'm kind of looking at that because the grappling, like I said, that's going to cancel each other out. They're both great at grappling. You cannot give one of these girls the edge in grappling. I think it's impossible. But looking at the striking, that's where I think it's going to persuade the judges is if Murata can get those strikings and that control time because Jandiroba, the bread and the butter, obviously is her grappling, which we all know that. Looking at Jandiroba, if you look at type in her name, it's going to be all about submissions and all that. But like I said, it's all about the striking in this fight also. So that's where I'm looking at Murata. I think if you can get her to sway the judges, then I think the decision is a great for her. But if you think one of these girls can out sub each other, then I would go ahead and put your money on it. That one of these girls is going to get a sub. But looking at it, like you said, I think the over 2.5 is great money for this. So looking at this fight, I think this is a talented female fight. I love the female fights on this card. Like I said in the beginning, I'm looking at Murata here, though.
I think if you want some insurance in this, I think the only finish, if it comes, would be Jandiroba by sub. And I think that's around plus 250-ish. So if you are, going in on the over 2.5, I think hedging your losses a little bit would be to go with the Jandiroba sub. But I don't see it happening, to
Yeah,
be honest.
exactly. Moving on to the next fight, the rematch from 5 years ago, Vera versus Grant. How do you feel, my man?
Yeah, I don't think like both guys have definitely gotten better since then, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
6 years ago,
Oh yeah.
they actually fought each other. I think Vera's had about 12 or 13 fights. Grant has only had about 5 fights. And I remember one of the commentary guys saying that during one of Grant's last fights, he doesn't care to fight that often because he has like successful businesses, right? He has a successful restaurant or something like that. So when he
Yeah.
goes out there and tries to fight, like it's more so for the love of it and try to showcase his skills. And he's constantly being overlooked, right? Just in his last fight alone, I think he was a plus 250 dog. So with Jonathan Martinez, goes out there and gets the big knockout win. His striking is good, right? Like it's very powerful, it's very heavy. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to what won him in the first, or allowed him to win in the first fight, which is the grappling. I think that Marlon Vera is definitely getting better in the grappling. He's been able to pull off 3 submissions since his loss to Davy Grant, and Davy Grant's only losses have come to submissions. But I do think that he's strong and powerful enough on top of Davy or Marlon Vera that he should be able to grind this fight out once again, similar to how we did it the last time. Like, when's the last time you ever saw Jose Aldo grind out somebody in a grappling affair,
Yeah.
right? That's not a good look for Marlon Vera in terms of the third round, which is more often than not historically the worst round for Jose Aldo. So the fact that he was able to have that amount of success against Marlon Vera doesn't bode well for him going up against Davy Grant once again. So shout out to anybody that got Davy Grant better than plus 200. I think there's a ton of value there. I still do think that this fight deserves to be closer to a pick'em, but Davy Grant is always overlooked. He's always counted out, which is why people continue to pour on the money with Marlon Vera. I like Grant here, though. I do think he drags this fight to the ground. I do think he gets the better of the positions. Marlon Vera isn't a knockout puncher. I think his best way to win this fight is one to either out-volume Davy Grant by stuffing takedowns as well, or pulling off a submission, which I think is possible. But I do think that Grant will be, heavy enough on top that he's going to be able to nullify anything that's coming from the back of Marlon Vera. So I'm going to be going with the dog here. I love Davy Grant in the spot. I think he pulls it off, and I think he pulls it off by decision.
Do you think though this is a big step up for Grant now?
Not necessarily, just because again, like he did fight him
Yeah.
about 5 or 6 years ago. Vera was only 23, so sure, Vera's definitely been fighting the higher level of competition. Jose Aldo, Song
Yeah.
Yadong, Sean O'Malley, and has obviously been making progress in that amount of time. It's just tough to say, with Davy Grant, he just remains so inactive, right? And like
That's
Manny
it.
Bermudez is a great jiu-jitsu player, so no harm in losing to that guy via sub. The
Yeah.
Damian Stasiak one was an interesting one, why he got stubbed by him. But I think that Vera is better than Stasiak in terms of submissions, so maybe he could be live in that aspect. But I don't think it's a huge step up for Davey. I think he's always ready to go. He's 35, so he's really got to get it
Yeah.
going right now. But I do think that he's still close enough to his prime to put up a performance to beat a guy like Marlon Vera.
That's what we're kind of looking at, like you said, with the inactiveness. I think that Grant here can be a live dog. I think he has the hands of power. I mean, literally, we don't know much about David Grant because of how much he's inactive. But when he comes out to fight, he's ready to go. That's the biggest thing. The casual fan's going to be like, this is all Cheeto, which is where a lot of guys are laying the money on because of fighting Sean Yudong, fighting Sean O'Malley. I mean, everybody knew that fight with Cheeto Vera versus Sean O'Malley. Everybody saw that fight. Everybody knows the name of Cheeto Vera, but do we know Davy Grant? That's the big thing. So unless you go to his restaurant, you really don't know Davy Grant because of, like you said, nobody knows about him. So, but the thing is, I think that Cheeto Vera has that explosiveness, has the skilled background to be Davy Grant. In my opinion, yes, but that line is very juiced. I'd rather go at plus money at Davy Grant if you got him early, and that's props to you. Like you said, I wish I would have got him earlier. But I do like David Grant here. I think the power he does show up here. I think people overlook David Grant, but don't kind of that explosiveness of Cheeto Vera is what I'm kind of trying to say. I think this is a wash, in my opinion, for me from betting wise because I can see this going completely both ways. It's hard to pick a standpoint because I can see the better athlete and the better striker in possibly Marvin Vera if he gets out and it explodes. But David Grant, though, with his hands, he has hands of steel. So it's hard for me to judge this fight. That's why I'm just kind of making it as a wash, in my opinion. But I see your point also with David Grant. I mean, the guy's been a killer these last 3 fights. So it's just kind of hard to judge this fight, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you. I'm hoping that a dog pulls it off for
Yeah,
my sake, though.
exactly. For your money wise, yeah, for your wallet.
Yeah.
So when Bruno Silva versus Wellington Thurman, this is an interesting fight. How do you feel about this one, man?
Yeah, Bruno Silva, not to be mistaken with the 125-pounder Bulldog.
Yeah.
Eno, I believe, is his nickname. But Bruno
Right.
Silva was on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil a couple years ago, did lose to Vitor Miranda, and didn't end up getting the call back. He did make a name for himself on the regional scene, I believe, since the Ultimate, or so actually, he started his career 5-5, and since then has able to put together about a 13-1 record, which looks really good as of late, especially with big upset victories in his last 2 fights over Artem Frolov and Alexander Shlemenko, both fights where he came in as a plus 400 underdog. He was able to go out there and get the finishes over both of those guys. This is easily a grappler versus striker matchup, and not to mention the striker's coming off a USADA suspension before he even made his first ever UFC fight. So that's a big caveat in this fight. Who knows what he's going to look like in this fight, and is that power going to translate now that he's not on those ever so good Brazilian supplements that he was probably on? I do think that Wellington Turman drags this fight to the ground. I do think that we see the grappler be more successful. I do think he gets to the ground, grinds him out. Submission possibility is there. I think the last time I looked at the sub prop, it was sitting at plus 500 for Turman. I just want to confirm that plus 400-ish for Turman by submission, worth a little bit of a sprinkle, but ultimately I think it's going to be Turman grinding this fight out over 15 minutes, getting the striking down time and time again. And as long as his chin isn't completely shot, it's obviously not a good look to go out there and get starched the way he did against Andrew Sanchez, who's not known to be a knockout puncher. But I think Sanchez is one of those guys that, like, once he starts to trust his hands, he seems like he has the physicality, explosiveness, and power to knock guys out. And I think, unfortunately for Turman, he was the first person to find that out. So I do think his chin will be okay here as long as he gets on the takedowns early and often. And as long as he's able to do that, I think he can go out there and grind this fight out over 15 minutes. So I'll go with the UFC vet and Turman, grinding out the recently USADA popped Bruno Silva.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. We don't know what's going to happen with Silva now. That's what I'm worried about. That's why I'm kind of making this as if he does have the power, where's his power coming from? Because obviously not coming from the supplements, because we saw that. So that's what I'm saying is Silva, yeah, I think he's a talented fighter. I think he has the qualities to be in the UFC, but does he have the talent coming off the supplements? That's the issue. Because everybody in Brazil, we know, everybody down there use those supplements. We know that good and well, but you can't be doing that in the UFC, that's where the caveat is Turman, obviously the vet. I think he's the better fighter here right now. That's what I'm kind of worried about, though, is where the power is going to come from Silva, because he can get the knockout if he does have that power still. But we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in this fight because there's no more supplements for Silva. So I'm kind of making this as a wash again for me. I'm not really blaming my money on it. I kind of want to see where Silva's at now, and I want to see Turman kind of chalk this up as a win for him and kind of move on. I mean, plain and simple, in my opinion, I'm just not really playing this fight. That's where I'm kind of moving on from this. So looking at Diego Lima versus Matt Brown, a great fight, but very interesting one. Talk to me about it, my man.
Yeah, it's tough to back the 40-year-old Matt Brown nowadays, right? He's really coming up short. I think his best success that he's had over the last several years is hurting Miguel Baeza the amount that he did, but unfortunately was not able to put him away in that fight. Diego Lima, obviously coming off a very underwhelming performance against Bilal Muhammad last time, but I got to give him the benefit of the doubt considering it was a pretty long layoff that he was coming off going into that fight. Not to mention the style of Bilal that was very difficult for him to deal with, but we did see Lima have a ton of success with that calf kick, and that's something that he was very successful with in his 3-fight winning streak that he had before that Bilal Muhammad loss. I think that's something that he can be implement here against Matt Brown, similar to what Miguel Baeza was able to, and then he's allowed to get his striking going after that, let his hands open up a little bit more, and I think that he'll be able to touch on Matt Brown in this fight. I'm not 100% sure if he'll be able to put him away. It's hard for me to trust Diego Lima, especially after his last performance. I want to make sure that his cardio checks out. It definitely checked out during his 3-fight winning streak, but it just looked really bad last time around against Bilal Muhammad. But I don't want to take too much away from Bilal, who it could have been Bilal being the reason as to why Diego Lima gassed the way that he did. Bilal just stays in your face, pressures you, pushes the pace, and I don't think that Diego Lima is ready to keep up with that type of pace. With Matt Brown, on the other hand, I don't think he has to worry about that type of approach. I think he just has to be worried early with the power that Matt Brown possesses, but then as this fight starts to drag on, I could see Diego Lima, maybe mixing in some takedowns, some get those calf kicks going again, start to render Matt Brown somewhat immobile, and then start to get his striking going after that. Could he knock him out? Possibly, but I think it could be a decision ultimately that Diego Lima ends up winning here, but I'm not trusting him at minus 160, minus 170.
I mean, we kind of thought that the brothers switched, I think, in my opinion. That's what it kind of looked like, that Diego Lima was kind of fighting not too long ago. But anyways, we're not talking about that fight. But I think this is a weird fight, but it's a good one in an aspect of what is the UFC trying to do in this fight? Because we've seen Diego Lima already time and time again. Matt Brown, the vets. What is UFC's plan with these two guys is where I'm kind of looking at. Like, what is the point of this fight? Like, are we trying to get Matt Brown out of the UFC? Are we trying to build up Lima? I mean, what are we trying to – that's what I'm trying to look at is what is the UFC trying to do in this fight? Because the odds are definitely indifferent to where I'm kind of looking at. I think this is more of a fight for Matt Brown, as I hate to say that. I hate to put my money on a guy like Matt Brown, but Diego Lima just has not looked the same. I think, yes, he is a good striker. I think he likes to play it safe in the ring. I think the calf kicks are there for him. But Matt Brown, I think he'll want to close the distance with this fight. I think if we're looking at grappling here, I think Matt Brown does have the advantage here. So that's what I'm kind of looking at is what is the UFC trying to do? And I think this is a more so a fight for Matt Brown. So that's where I'm kind of looking at it from that standpoint is I don't really trust Lima right now. I think I need to see more out of Lima. So I think if Brown can use the striking and use basically his grappling advantage, he can outdo this for Lima. Because I don't know where Lima's head is at also. So I'm kind of indifferent to this fight. I'm kind of looking at Matt Brown. I hate to say it. I hate to put my money on a guy like Matt Brown, but I'd rather take plus money here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Again, it's a very close fight. I don't agree with the odds being as wide as they are. And again, Diego Lima can't be that trustworthy. So Matt Brown could absolutely, sip that fountain of youth and get a victory this weekend.
I mean, neither can Douglas, right? I mean, I don't trust either Lima right now. So,
yeah.
Anyways, moving on to the co-main. It's interesting that we have Alexei Oleinik, Grandpa Oleinik, as the co-main. What do you think of this fight, man?
Old man Oleinik's still sticking around, right? But
right.
I truly think it's more so the fact that he's had a couple main event slots over the last couple of years that he gets this co-main event slot. So it's almost just like an honorary member, almost like Jairzinho Rozenstruik just continues to get main event slots because he's just been the main event slot guy since the Overeem fight, right? So how they match up though, this is a tough fight. Like, I'm not willing to shell out minus 220 on a guy like Sergey Spivak, who I believe still has a little bit to prove to us. Alexei Oleinik could really pull it out of his ass if he wants to. Spivak, I think he's most dominant when he's able to get his grappling going and really start to wear on guys on top like he did against Jared Vandera. But do you really want to get caught up in the grappling game of Alexei Oleinik? Probably not. I don't think he's that skilled at that point. He might be the younger, faster, stronger, more powerful guy, but we know in jiu-jitsu you don't need those attributes to be successful. And I think that Oleinik could potentially make it tough for him. I will ultimately pick Spivak. I do think this fight goes long, though. I could see a decision. I think it was like plus 600 or plus 700 for Spivak to win by decision. I think that's a decent shot that people can take. And I could see this be a slow grinding fight. Like, I could see Spivak not even wanting to entertain the grappling instances here. I could see him just staying behind his jab, staying at distance, and kind of keeping Oleinik at bay. Does he have the power to knock out Oleinik? Probably he could. Or even later in this fight, once Oleinik starts to slow down, maybe that's when he starts to go for the grappling, get the takedown, get that top position, and try to get a ground and pound. But I'm more so leaning the over here, which I believe is plus money, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, over 1.5 is plus 135. And then obviously Spivak to win by decision is something that I'm leaning pretty heavily to at plus 677. You know I'm going to be throwing some lunch money change on that. But yeah, I like Spivak. I think either a late finish or a knockout is probably, a late finish or a decision is most likely for Spivak, but he does not want to tangle with Oleinik early in this fight. I'd be very surprised if he willingly engages in the clinch, grappling, takedowns, whatever the fuck it is, in that first 7.5 minutes of this fight. After that, I think it's all, it's going to be all Spivak. So I'll go Spivak, decision as my official prediction for this fight.
That's what I'm kind of looking at also is Spivak going to get humbled in that first round by Olynyk? Because this is obviously a step up in competition. This is Spivak. Is he ready for the UFC caliber of fights? This is what the UFC is trying to say. I think what this fight is, can we have Spivak as this mainliner now? Like, is he ready to go? Because this guy is still young. I think he's a better athlete. Like I said, younger, faster, stronger, everything you can possibly think of. He has it all. I think Spivak is a good fighter, yes. But this is Alexei Olynyk. This is the Grandpa Olynyk. He's still, the name value is still there, obviously. So, and we know the guillotine. I mean, this is literally Olynyk. So, can he be humbled in round one? I think it's possibly so. If you want to sprinkle some money on Olynyk by round one submission, I would not blame you. I think I can see it happening. His feedback is not ready for this fight, but I think he is ready. I think he's a better fighter here. You're obviously not going to get me saying I think it's Olynyk by decision. I'm taking Spivak all the way. I think he's the better fighter going into round 2 and 3. I think this is where the fight's going to go. If he gets out of round one, I think this is his fight to win. Like I said, if you want to sprinkle money on Olynyk in round one, I think I would not blame you one bit. I can see it happening by just him getting caught, Spivak getting caught. So I'm looking at Spivak though. Overall, I think this is the better fighter. I'm taking Spivak, my man.
Yeah, I like it. Spivak decision is something I'm definitely going to be riding this weekend.
And then going to the 50-50 fight, Dan Ige, 50K. What do you think about him, my man?
Yeah, this is a tough fight to call. Super fucking tough fight to call.
This is, yeah.
This is where I don't really like being a predictor and a handicap because people are just like, oh, if you get this one wrong, you fucking suck. But like pre-fight, like, you know, it is 50-50 for a reason. And afterwards, it might not look 50-50, especially if somebody goes out there and gets a dominant win or a dominant performance. But I do lean ever so slightly on the Dan Ige side of things. And he's a guy that I've looked to go out there and fade in the past. But he has truly started to come into his own, right? Stealing around after off of Calvin Kattar in that 5-round fight. Obviously, he got demolished in the other 4 rounds. Comes back and starches Gavin Tucker relatively quickly in his fight. But the guy's durable as hell. I think he's going to have the speed and the blitzing advantage here over a Korean Zombie who was getting touched up and hurt by all sorts of things by Brian Ortega last time around. And that was probably one of the most unpredictable outcomes you could ever predict, especially considering what Brian Ortega's striking looked like before that fight. He definitely worked on it, definitely polished it up, and it definitely worked out for him going up against Chan Sung Yu, who just couldn't keep up with the pace, pressure, and the speed of Brian Ortega that night. And I'm expecting the same thing here. Both guys have really good jiu-jitsu games. I'd give the slight advantage to Ige as he's a legitimate black belt. But if you guys remember, Korean Zombie pulled off the first ever twister submission in the UFC. The guy definitely has some tricks up his sleeve with the subs. But I'd be curious to see what the Moicano fight looked like if it went longer than that first round. Because I think that Moicano was the minus 220 favorite for a good reason. I think he was a much better fighter. I think he'd be able to put on a much better striking pace than Korean Zombie. But Zombie does have some big power in his hands. However, I don't think he has the power that's going to knock out Dan Ige. So I do like Ige here. I actually even like Ige by finish because I do think he could touch the chin of Chan Sung Yu. I think he could put him down probably in the 3rd or 4th round of this fight. But I think we'll see Ige land the bigger, better shots. I think the takedowns will be there for him if he wants them. But yeah, I like Ige ever so slightly, and I'll take him to win probably by 3rd round KO here.
Which, looking at BetOnline's odds right now, it's Ige with negative 125 and plus money on Korean Zombie plus 105. So as you can tell, a lot of people still don't know coming into Thursday. Fights are Saturday, obviously. People don't know where to go with this fight. This is a fight where it's literally a huge pickup. This is a very close fight that, like you said, I hate to predict it because honestly, I can see this going both ways. I mean, it's a plain and simple fight. You don't know with these two guys. I mean, Dan Ige, the guy who has always 2 black guys in every single picture you can find. I mean, the durability is there. I mean, that's where I'm looking at is more so that durability-wise. Who do I trust more in that aspect, which I'm trusting Dan Ige, obviously. I think the durability is there for him. I think that he's a better chin. I think if he can mix in the grappling with the takedowns, that he can outstrike and out-grapple the Korean Zombie easily. But at the flip side, Korean Zombie, you can't count him out at all. I mean, he looked different in that Ortega fight, obviously, yes, but it's a close fight. That's what I'm having trouble trying to break it down because of how close this fight is, in my opinion. But if I had to pick, it would be Dan Ige. I think he wins this fight. I think the durability outshines the Korean Zombie. That's what I'm kind of looking at, my man.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. Again, this fight could go either way, but I'm gonna lean with the guy that also seems like he has more to give to the sport. I've heard from a couple of places. I've seen even John Hyun Kwok. I'm completely probably butchering his name. He's one of the MMA reporters over there for
Yeah,
Korea, but he talked about that there's a possibility that if Korean Zombie loses this weekend, probably hangs it up, and that's not a good mentality to be going into a fight with a
exactly.
guy that's hungry like Dan Ige. So, yeah, mentally, I don't like to put too much credence into that, but that's definitely not the type of mental space you want to be in going into a main event slot against a young, hungry guy like Dan Ige.
Who wants to get this fight taken care of, and basically he wants this 50K bonus, as you can tell. Obviously, I mean, like I said, every single picture you can find with him is two freaking black eyes, so he's ready to go. I mean, but yeah, like you said, this may be the last fight for Korean Zombie. As I tucked in my notes, he needs this win badly to stay in the UFC. I think it did not to stay, but I think to not hang him up. So, like you were saying, but it's a close fight. I'm taking Dan Ige though. I think the money on Vegas. I think it's funny still how this is almost a pick'em still coming into Thursday. I'll be interested to see when it comes in on Saturday morning because that will kind of vary where we're looking at. But looking at the over 4.5 at -120 and under 4.5, which is at -110. That's obviously a pick'em also. What do you think of the over and under in this fight, man? Before we head out.
I
Yeah, that's what
fuck.
I'm saying
It's
too.
tough, man, because I think if there is a finish, it probably comes from the Ige side, right? But Korean Zombie has been shown to be durable as well. You're putting a gun to my head. I'm going to go with the over.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's a pick 'em. Yeah, it's literally a
yeah,
straight pick 'em.
yeah, I could see Ige getting that finish probably in round 3 though. But I see either scenario playing out here, man. It's such a close and tough fight
Exactly.
to call.
Exactly. So that pretty much wraps up this show for us, guys. Again, thank you so much, man, for coming on. It's obviously a pleasure talking to you, like always. I'm ready for this weekend. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend. Weigh-ins obviously will sway some of our opinions depending on how that goes. So we need to definitely watch for the weigh-ins because that will kind of sway things. See how Chito Vera looks, obviously on the scale. So, that pretty much wraps us up, my man. Again, thank y'all for tuning in with us. Always follow him, MMA Log of the Night on Twitter. You can easily find him there. Find his YouTube. He's always everywhere in the MMA field. You cannot. It's obviously not Where's Waldo. You can easily find him. So that wraps up the show for us, guys. Again, thank y'all and have a great and safe rest of your day, everybody.